Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Aliana Kernodle. The mother of a student who was killed outside a Philadelphia football game in 2022 has filed a lawsuit against the school alleging it should have done more to prevent the shooting, raising questions about the legal responsibility schools have to protect students. Joining me to dig into this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, what events led to this lawsuit and what's the lawsuit alleging?
Yeah, so Nicolas Elizalde, he was at a football game in 2022 and he was shot after it. He was, I think, walking alongside a road and there was, as far as I can tell, it sounded like some kind of maybe gang violence or different kind of individuals. And he was not the intended target, but he was struck by a bullet and killed. And his mom, his mother, Meredith Elizalde, has filed a lawsuit against the school district of Philadelphia, saying that they were liable for the shooting death of her son, and essentially saying that they should have done more to predict, detect, and prevent crime following that football scrimmage. And that comes from court documents that her legal team has filed against the school district. And so that's really the impetus behind it, right? Is there was this tragic killing, senseless killing. And I think that everybody can agree that was, like this heinous act of violence. Like the school district also has said that stuff to that effect in legal documents. But then the tension is, who's responsible? Is anybody responsible for that? And so she's alleging that the school district had known about the high amounts of crime, and the complaint lists, the complaint lists, from what I can remember, all the different instances of crime in the neighborhood, like shooting victims or different kinds of shooting crime in the neighborhood and around there, on or near school districts, like that specific school. So basically said that they should have known that this was like basically a high risk thing that was going on. They did not have the necessary security. They did not have the necessary protocols in place. And, that because of their policies, this was a consequence, essentially, that they're trying to argue, because of the failure of the school district of Philadelphia, her son is dead. And the school district says that's not the case at all. So basically it starts getting into like a lot of these constitutional issues of how do you hold government officials accountable? Public schools are an extension of the government. And so there are different mechanisms which you can use in the law to hold school leaders accountable. And so that starts to kind of hinge on that. But essentially, the complaint from Meredith Elizalde says, the school district was well aware of the threats of gun violence at district-sponsored public athletic events, and that the school district was aware of the recent gun violence at 3 football games organized by the school district, one of which occurred 4 days prior to the incident at issue in this case. And that despite that, they affirmatively, quote, organized and produced this large-scale public event pursuant to policies that did not provide for security or coordination with law enforcement. And among the members of the public who attended the event was the intended target of the shooting, and Mr. Elizalde, Nicolas, her son, was shot and killed in the crossfire. So trying to just lay that out as quickly as possible in that court document. And this is kind of related to some of the legal back and forth, and the school district is filing a motion to dismiss. And what they've intimated, they haven't filed that, but what they've intimated is that they do not hold any responsibility for this, and that the mother does not have the constitutional ability to file this lawsuit against the school district, and so it should be thrown out. And so basically the school district said the 14th Amendment does not impose a duty on the district to protect members of the public from private violence. So essentially, you can't hold a school district accountable for the crime that goes on around the school district. This was after a football game. If you're walking down the street and you get shot, then how is the school district held liable for that under the Constitution, right? Or in the law, how is the school district liable for that? And would that expand the role of, the school to be outside of these different events, outside of the school day? How far does that extension, go? And so that's one of the questions that the court is going to have to figure out, is how far does that extension go? Like, what role in providing, security, safety for students does a school district have? And so it's a very interesting sort of question, right, this balance between protecting students and also, realizing that there are a lot of school districts, there's a lot of schools in some of these higher crime areas where there's, different efforts to try to combat that crime, combat gang violence. But, that is going on. That is a reality in some of these school districts. How do you stop that? How do you, crack down on that? And is that the school's role, or is that, the police, and sort of getting into some of these gray zones and some of the, but specifically in this case, I think it starts focusing on, what are the constitutional demands of school districts in terms of student safety. And so I think that that's what the court is going to figure out. And the school district says, there's no cause of action under the due process clause for failing to protect a member of the public from private violence. And that, you would have to, quote, impose a constitutional duty on the school district that does not exist. So that's what the school district has said in the documents that it submitted to the court. And, the mom's side of the argument, they say, like, that's a completely unfounded position and that they're not going to back down. They're not going to withdraw any part of it. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we are looking at here in this case. It's very interesting, I think, just to look at the different aspects of that and kind of see where the court's going to land.
And you mentioned that the school district is likely going to file a motion to dismiss. Can you kind of lay out where it's at in the legal process right now?
Yeah. So the school district, in discussions with Meredith Elizalde last week, they had to try to get what's called a pre-motion conference, basically sit down and say, this is what we're going to talk about when we file a motion to dismiss. And that is when Meredith Elizalde's lawyer said, we're not going to remove our complaint here. We're not going to change our position, that the school district's position is unfounded. And we got some of that back and forth on the issues that they're discussing here constitutionally. So there was an order out this week basically saying that the school district has 14 days, 2 weeks to file that motion to dismiss. And so that's where we are. The school district is, I'm sure, likely already working on that, is going to have that filed here soon so that they can, argue that they're not constitutionally liable. And we've seen kind of inklings of that in some of the documents that they've filed, saying that it would basically impose a constitutional duty to protect students if the court were to rule in Meredith Elizalde's favor on behalf of her son.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.